Hello and welcome to this video for the Bicester School History Department. This is for Year 10 and Year 11 students studying AQA GCSE History, specifically the Britain and the Health of the People module. It will use the medicine booklet which is available to download from the school website. The link is in the description. The purpose is to give you a general introduction to the topic and to guide you through the tasks in the booklet. Pause this video as you work through the tasks. Don't watch it all in one go. And if you have any more specific questions, make sure to email your history teacher. Now this episode will look at surgery in the Middle Ages. As mentioned in previous episodes, surgery was not done by doctors, but rather by barber surgeons, and they were looked down on by doctors, even though many were highly skilled. However, surgery in this time was very dangerous, and most patients died when infection set in the wound. There were three big problems with surgery, and it's really important that you understand all three and why they were each a problem. The first one was pain. Most surgery was done without pain relief when the patient was awake. The pain might make the patient pass out or go into a state of shock. They did use willow bark, wine and opium to reduce pain, but dosing these was very difficult, and there was no effective anaesthetic in order to deal with the pain. The second problem was bleeding, because if you managed to deal with the pain, the bleeding was another issue. Barber surgeons had no real way to control bleeding or resupply fresh blood. After the surgery, they would often cauterize the wound. This would involve hot metal or oil being poured over the wound to seal it up and to stop it bleeding. This would be very painful. However, many patients died from lack of blood in their body. The third problem, if you managed to survive the pain and the bleeding, and the most deadly at this point, was infection. As mentioned before, wounds would often get infected, which in the long term would cause death. They did try and use wine and honey and garlic, which had some slightly antiseptic properties. This meant that they killed germs, but they had nothing that was effective. And it was likely that if you had surgery in medieval times, you would probably die. Now, the majority of surgeons didn't write books due to the fact that they were lowly educated, but there were a few standout examples. The first one was John of Ardenne. He was a 14th century surgeon who famously had a 50% success rate for surgery. This meant that 50% of his patients survived. This might sound pretty bad, but at that time, that was amazing. He used pain-killing ointment, and he wrote the practice of surgery in 1350. He urged doctors to think for themselves and to not completely follow Hippocrates and Galen. He even treated the poor for free, and had quite a modern outlook on surgery. He was widely read in the medieval times, but didn't bring in a massive change. Have a go at this practice question. It's an 8-mark question, so you'll need to write at least 2 paragraphs. You have about 10 minutes of writing time for this question. See if you can have a go at it. If you want some help, remember to think about the first paragraph should think about the significance of the person at the time that they're working. So for example, you might want to talk about how John of Ardenne had a 50% success rate for surgery and how he introduced a pain ointment. For your second paragraph, you might want to talk about how long-term John of Ardenne didn't really have much of an impact. Galen and Hippocrates still were widely read. However, you might want to talk about how his practice compares favourably to more modern surgeons. Now, as you could probably work out, surgery didn't really progress during this time period. And even when the dissection of bodies in 1300 was allowed to see their anatomy, how the body is made up, Nothing new is actually learned, as they were just there to show that Galen was right and not challenge him, even though, as we learned in previous lessons, he was wrong. A really experienced group of surgeons were army surgeons, as they had plenty of experience patching up bodies. But because they were on the battlefield, they just had to learn the skills very quickly. There are many wars during this time period, and so there's plenty of opportunities to learn about the body. Have a go at the questions below. Try and answer in as much detail as you can. Now for the exam question at the bottom of this, you can have a go if you feel like a little bit of a challenge. You need to know a little bit about modern surgery and compare it to medieval surgery, so you might want to return to this question after you finish the booklet. But, in short, you need to compare the time period that we're looking at now, which is medieval times, and the modern time period. And you need to come up with two differences between the two. So you might want to talk about how, in modern times, we have anaesthetic, which puts us to sleep and there's no pain, whereas this wasn't necessarily the case in medieval times. You might want to also talk about how nowadays we use antiseptics, whereas in medieval times these weren't widely used. Another key surgeon was Guy de Chauliac. He wrote 7 volumes on a wide range of topics such as anatomy, wounds and fractures. He did also make some mistakes though, and he thought that pus was good for healing a wound and you should leave it. Another key pair of individuals were Hugh and Theodoric of Lucca, who were a father and son pair. They disagreed on the use of pus, however, and instead soaked bandages in wine to try and stop infection and wounds cleaning up. They also tried to make a patient unconscious using a form of anaesthetics. These were very different to other medical practitioners and other medieval surgeons, so they're kind of a standout case. Have a go at the activity on this page using the information provided on the previous pages. You might want to re-watch previous portions of this video. Make sure to email your history teacher if you need any more specific help. For the last question, make sure you get some really detailed notes about the 3 problems of surgery. This will come back again and again throughout this booklet. Thanks for watching.